Hello, everyone. I'm Eric D'Souza, and you are joining us today for another episode of Crime Writers of Canada. And we are continuing our journey of interviewing members of Crime Writers of Canada that have been nominated for an awards of excellence. Um, I don't know why, but I always like talking to Atlantic authors. Other side of the world for me, but I always find it fun. And today I'm talking to somebody I've never spoken to before. Happy to have you on the show, Ray Critch.
Happy to be here. Thanks very much, Eric.
So we are speaking today because Ray has been nominated for the Best First Crime Novel, sponsored by Melody Campbell, for his novel, The Beltane Massacre. A little bit about you. By day, Ray Critch is a lawyer from St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, practicing civil litigation at MacGillivray, injury and insurance law. He has appeared on every level of court in Newfoundland and Labrador and in the Supreme Court of Canada. By night, he is happily married husband and father of two. However, every once in a while, he carves off some spare time to pop to a local sports bar and do some writing. Somehow, he has managed to write three novels, the first of which, The Beltane Massacre, was published by Breakwater Books in 2025 and is a finalist for the Crime Writers of Canada's First Book Award of Excellence. I had to look this word up, Beltane. I did. I found out it was a real word. If anybody else is like me, could you explain it? And at the same time, could you tell us about the massacre?
Yeah, no, historically, Beltane is a Scottish fertility festival. It's a rite of spring, usually early May, May 1st these days. It's sort of been revived in Edinburgh and other parts of Scotland as essentially a celebration of spring. So in Edinburgh, there's what's called the Fire Festival. And so you get a torchlight parade starting from from the Royal Mile, weaving its way down across to Calton Hill, where there is a bonfire. Just as it's described in the novel, that's what really happens. I lived in Edinburgh for 3 years. I went to two of them. They're a fun, fascinating experience. Difficult for an introvert like me sometimes, but still, nonetheless, a lot of fun and really interesting. Now, there have historically been Beltane massacres back in the sort of witch trial days. This was not a real massacre. This did not actually happen, but it's a sort of fictional starting point for the book, for the main protagonist to figure out what he wants to do with what's next.
Um, so your main protagonist, uh, I don't want to spoil too much, but I think it's safe to say that something bad is going to happen to him at
Well,
this
no, I
mass.
usually tell people like, the main point, the way that I came to this idea for the book was a combination of like watching a lot of spy movies, reading a lot of spy novels, mystery novels, and realizing that the main character is usually meant to be a protagonist that the reader or the author relates to. So you're living vicariously through the person. So what would it take then for somebody like me, an academic, a lawyer, a relatively sedentary guy, to get involved in something like espionage? And the quick answer that came to me is everyone he loves would have to die. And that's the prologue. So the massacre of the title happens in the first 20 pages, and the rest of the book is him figuring out why, trying to figure out who's protecting the bomber, and coming to terms with the grief.
As much as that is a very clever way of turning this normal person into a spy, it's a very sensitive subject matter. And I think in rule one of crime writing, even in crime writing, it's like don't kill the kids, and even worse, don't kill the dog. It's not easy killing kids, and you have to approach it very thoughtfully. I've read it. I think you did a good job on it, but how did you consider approaching that subject?
Well, it's tough. I have two children of my own now. I had one at the time that this was written, and when I wrote it, it was like very much trying to figure out what would make this happen, how this would work, um, and you had to be in the right headspace. So I did not write that scene the first day I sat down to write this book. Other parts of it, in the prologue were there, but I started with chapter one and came back to the prologue when I was ready for it. And so you had to get into a headspace where the grief is there, the grief is real, and then you could explain where it came about. Um, and I will say it got a little a little tighter in the editing process, a little less morose perhaps. But I think the key was to make sure that people feel it, but are able to move on from it. Because ultimately, the whole point of the book is reconciling with that, and building on it and moving on in a way that John Wick never does. Uh,
Mhm. Um, I find a lot of us, when we sit down to write our first novel, our protagonist has chunks of us in it. Um, I didn't know you that well yet. I knew you from your bio, and I knew you from what I did of research. I was looking for commonalities. I saw the academia. It was starting to veer off after that. But you put this little point in your bio. You mentioned that you went to the bar, which is not a normal place to write a book, and your main character, Rowan, went to a bar to read. Again, not a place that most of us go to read. So that's a little peek of you. Are there other peaks of you in him, or is he very much a new character or a imaginary character?
Yeah, no, for me, again, the realization that crime and fantasy novels were really all about living vicariously through the character. I had no problem putting a fair chunk of myself in Rowan McRae. Even the name, McRae, of Ray. His last name is literally just saying that he's of me. The Rowan name is a hat tip to John le Carre and the Night Manager, where the aliases all involve trees. So it's one that he didn't use. So I just stole it from there, but did because he didn't use that one. Um, so that's where the name came from. It's literally a little bit of John le Carre and me. Um, but no, it's he's more handsome than I am. He's in way better shape than I am. I love to swim too, though, and that's his exercise in the book. Working in pubs, that was my grad school experience. I would write it in the office all morning, go for lunch, sometimes go for a swim, and then go to the pub and read all afternoon. It was just a nice place to get out of my head, get a change of scenery, and a little snack, and do what I needed to do for work anyway. Then when it came time to write, I'm in my early 40s. I have a busy life at home. I work from home at that point as well a fair bit. So my home office, which you can see behind me here, this is where I do most of my law work. I'm usually a lawyer when I'm in this office. If I want to write, I need a different changes. I need a change of scenery. I
Mm.
need to be somewhere else. So the idea of going out to write in the pub just made sense to me from grad school, and so the process. Rowan is my alter ego in a lot of ways. I'm unabashed about that, but he's a bit of an idealized version of me with some special skills and some differences. I was never in military intelligence. Um, I can't do what he does, and my wife and children are all still alive, which is also helpful.
Um, in your description, I think I saw it on Amazon, but other places too, and I'm assuming you wrote this. It describes your book as simultaneously a high stakes mystery and an in-depth exploration of grief and loss. On their own, each of those are very hard to write. So kudos to you for tackling both. I've read enough to know that you've done a good job of it. My question though is about pace. High stakes mystery, or high stakes, spy stories are typically action reaction, fast paced stories. In depth exploration of grief and loss is very much a slowdown. Where do you find the balance of both those paces clashing with each other?
Well, there's a couple things. So I tried to keep like chapters are short. When I was writing it, I never wrote a chapter that was much longer than 3,000 words to try and keep things moving. So what needs to happen here? What am I moving on? Where's the story going? And then going back through, it's why is Rowan doing this? Why does this matter to him? And that's where the moments of grief would come from. Understanding that he's doing what he's doing is valuable. Understanding why is what makes it a different element. Which, part of this, the origin idea of this came from a rewatch during lockdowns during 2020, 2021. My wife and I rewatched the entire Bond series, all of them. And what distinguishes for me the Daniel Craig ones from the earlier ones is I don't buy King and Country. No one does the things Bond does just for loyalty to an abstract notion. When the Daniel Craig one comes about, we see revenge. We see anger. We see why he's doing what he's doing. So I had to build in that why into the character of Rowan McRae in order to make him compelling in the first place. And I think I've done that. I'm fairly confident in most aspects of my life, but I have very little confidence when it comes to my writing. And getting this nomination blew my mind. Like that, I would be, considered for this, largely because again, I don't always know what I'm doing when it comes to writing. I'm not so used to this, but maybe I do, and I just didn't realize it. It's a strange experience.
I've read enough to be like like I'm in a weird position where I because I'm reading everybody like one a day. So I'm reading like three chapters, interviewing people, putting it down, reading the next person's book. And in the summer, I get to finish them. And I finish as many as I can, and I can't wait to finish yours. Speaking about what you're good at and what you're not, you seem very good at public speaking. Obviously, from academia and being a lawyer, I think you're more calm than I am right now. Have you done a lot of public speaking, and do you ever get nervous?
Yeah, the last time I was really truly nervous with public speaking, I was an academic, and I'd been asked to speak at a conference on the administration of justice about privacy. And I was the third speaker on the panel. The first speaker gets up and they're representing the police associations of Ontario, and they start talking about how privacy is a myth and we shouldn't worry about it at all. And then the next lawyer gets up and he works for the Civil Liberties Association, and he says, privacy is critical and we should be terrified. Um, and so I get up and I look out over the audience, and I recognize a few people at the front and center table as being judges of the Court of Appeal of Newfoundland. And then okay, yeah, that's the entire Court of Appeal of Newfoundland at that center table. And then I notice a couple other judges that I recognize on either side of that table and realize, okay, that's the entire trial division of the Newfoundland Supreme Court on either side of them. And two tables behind the Court of Appeal, I see my ex-wife. When you're ready to give a talk in front of every judge in the province and your ex-wife, you know you're going to be okay. Once you've got through that, and I got up there and said, "Hi, I'm terrified. How are you?" And everyone laughed. I broke the ice, and we could all move on. And yeah, so once you've done that, everything else is light, except perhaps the Supreme Court of Canada, which is a whole other beautiful experience, but also terrifying experience.
Yeah, I can imagine that almost sounds scarier than your book.
It it is okay. So I did a 20 minutes presentation for the Supreme Court of Canada, where I began talking and I remember what I said. And 20 minutes later, I finished talking and I remember what I said. And I have almost no memory of the intervening 18 minutes. I'm told it went well, but you're in the zone. You're doing a
Yeah.
thing. You're in the moment, and so your long-term memory just doesn't retain what was happening there. So there's video. People can watch it if they want, but I have no memory.
I'm thinking of balancing of you being a writer and being a lawyer. Only because I know a few lawyers turned writers. Some of them are still doing it, like Rodden Rotenberg. Others, like Catherine McKenzie, got a certain level of success, quit her day job. What's the plan, or what's the plan, and what's the dream for you? Quitting the day job?
No, I think I really enjoy my legal work. I don't think I'd want to give it up entirely. But, 20 years from now, I'll be 66, and maybe then I'll be ready to retire. And by retire, I mean just right. I'm going to keep writing. I'm not going to stop writing. It's a great hobby. It's a good mental health break for me. Ultimately, that's why I started doing it. This started as a hobby. Yeah, it's a way for me to get out of the house, have something that I was doing where I wasn't responsible to or for anything. It was pure play. And since I found that, and it's good, it works for me. Now, 2 years ago, we had our second child, so I've had a lot less free time over the last 2 years for clear reasons. But I can still usually get out once a week to do a few hours. So it's not going away. I'm not going to stop writing. But I'm also not going to stop lawyering anytime soon. Now, if we end up making J.K. Rowling money and, I can afford that castle in Scotland, we'll talk. But other than that, no, I like my day job too much to quit. But I also like my writing too much to stop doing that too.
It's hard finding a balance. I'll tell you this, but especially with little kids. But good luck to you. Um,
There's no balance. You just fit in what you can fit in and sleep when you can.
I guess it's a question of sacrificing sleep. Um, your bio said you wrote two other novels. If anybody becomes a fan of yours like I am becoming, when do we get three of the other two?
That's between me and the publisher for now. The Breakwater has a manuscript for number two. Number three is written as well. These are all Rowan McRae is central to all of these. Some of the other characters come back too. Um, I'm not going to tell you which ones because that gives away too many things.
Yes.
But my current projection right now is that there'll be five Rowan McRae books, and then there's another character who's in book four that may end up becoming their own thing later on. But book four is still very much in progress. You know, the first three took me 2 years to write. I've spent the last 2 years on book four. But again, there's a baby. That's why. So
It's
here's hoping
very
that if anybody wants to write Breakwater Books and ask for them to release number two, please do.
yeah, I can tell you when the kids get a little older, it gets a little easier.
That was my experience as well. I think my older son was 9 when I started. Not sorry, he was 11 when I started writing this. Um, he's 15 now, so
Yeah. Once they can start taking care of their own, you have more alone time. But you know that. So, I'm going to tell you what I tell everyone. I was lucky enough to get those who were nominated early, but I'm very specific with my boss that don't tell me who won. So I could wish you very good luck, Ray.
thank you.
I don't know who won in your category, and I'm rooting for you.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. I'm yeah, still flabbergasted by being nominated. Honestly, it's just it's one of those you love me, you really love me moments. Like the book is actually good. Okay, I had no idea. Um, It's the nature of Newfoundland. There's a lot of writers around here. I'm not even the most famous Critch on my street. I live down the road from Mark, so it's just how it works around here. But I will say the Newfoundland writing scene has been very helpful to me. This book wouldn't have been published if it weren't for Writers NL, who host a Pitch Wars event every fall, and I pitched at that, and the book was named most marketable at that, so it was lovely little moment, and the publisher got interested at that event. So this book wouldn't exist if it weren't for that organization and the community that we have here. So
Well, kudos to them. And it was a pleasure talking to you, Ray.
thanks, Eric.